feet of the chamber on them. And how do you do that? First 6 seconds, point A to point B, everything you got. Everything you got. Turn that shit up. Let's go.
Welcome to Scoop Order Live. It is Tuesday night. It is a crazy time in college football. We are counting down the days before spring ball starts. We are almost about 2 weeks away. The 7th of March is when it officially kicks off. Winter conditioning is winding down. These guys are excited about that. A lot of position battles to talk about, some recruiting news to talk about. And we're going to have a really fun guest tonight. He's going to interview me. So it's going to be a little bit different tonight. So super excited about that. But as always, we're thankful for you guys, grateful for you guys. If you enjoy this, click like, click subscribe, comment down below, because I want to kind of get grilled tonight a little bit about my recruiting, a little bit about some of the stuff is in my career. What was it ever your dream to be a Buckeye or be a Pittsburgh Steeler? What did you want to be when you were a little kid in terms of an athlete, or what was the team that you dreamed of being on? Comment that down below. Real curious to see if any of that's evolved. Maybe some of you guys weren't Ohio State fans. Maybe you guys have always been Ohio State fans. I'd love to know that. So write that in the comments below, and we are going to kind of explore some of that. That being said, bring in my good friend David Pinterick. David, how are you tonight?
Doing great, Kirk. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. Well, you have the floor. You're now the host of the show, so I've handed you the baton, and start your engines.
So let me give everybody a little bit of background. Kirk and I have been friends for quite a few years, and we'll talk offline every once in a while. And I said, why doesn't somebody ask you about your career, about your recruitment? We always try to get the backstory from these guys that somebody like Bill or somebody else would interview, and we hear from the experts that the kids are coy. That's a polite way of saying it when they give their answers. And, so to get the background, why don't we just go straight to the horse's mouth? We've got somebody in our own backyard in the form of Kirk Barton. And, you had mentioned something about, in the intro. I heard you asking, was everybody's dream to play for Ohio State? For me, absolutely. I was going to be a linebacker for Woody Hayes and then eventually go play linebacker for Tom Landry at the Dallas Cowboys. Now, if you knew me and saw me in high school, I was 5'10", 170 pounds. I wasn't going to do that. And so I felt bad that my career never blossomed and all stuff. But I also see people like you, and I'm kind of envious. And I know that you've kind of dismissed that envy and say, you had the genes, the DNA to allow you to be 6'6", 290 pounds and carry it well and be able to do what you do and all that stuff. But, I still look at people like you, and I know several guys that you played with and against, and I'm envious of all that stuff. So we look up to you, and it's cool that we get to become friends with you. It's a little bit of hero worship, but that's cool. That's really cool. So let's talk about your career, and I want to start with let's look at your recruitment and how that went. And you were recruited out of Massillon Perry, 2000 class of 2003. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was a tight end. First was recruited as a defensive end, and then I ended up being a tackle, which is my best spot by far.
So, as a tight end, how were you ranked as far as an offensive lineman relative to your peers?
I think pretty poorly, just because I played tight end. I wasn't. I was definitely a project. So I only weighed 260 pounds. A lot of the offensive linemen I was ranked against were the normal 290, 300, 315. So, I was a lot lighter than those guys. I was a lot faster and more athletic than those guys. So there was a little bit more projecting going on. I don't know how that would have played like in a time like today, because I feel like these kids are already closer to ready made. The kids, they seem like they're more developed, they're bigger. So today, I don't know if they would have taken me as a 260 pound project, because most of the guys that they offer, they're 300 pounds already, or they're 295 or 285, whatever it is. So it was different. But the biggest thing is, it's not how heavy you are, it's how strong are you, and can you pass protect. And that was something I was actually really good at when we went to this Ohio State camp, where you got to do a lot of one-on-one pass blocking, and it really is it's a battle to win every rep, and I was the best guy there at that drill, and that's the drill that the coaches really look at.
So when in your high school career did you start figuring out that you're going to get your college paid for by playing football?
Was
it in your sophomore year?
Yeah, I started getting letters and stuff my sophomore year, but they sent a lot of letters to a lot of people. I'd say probably going into my junior year, I really did well on the camp circuit. Like Ohio State invited me to all their games for my junior year because I went down to their camp and I was dominant. I played defensive end, and I just, they have drills that you do like one-on-one pass rusher. I never got blocked. I beat every single tackle I went against as a pass rusher. Um, and it just, kind of blossomed from there. And I get recruited by Jim Haycock. And, I loved the Ohio State scheme because I like to disrupt and get upfield and get sacks and rush the quarterback. But, like we ran a 3-4 in high school essentially, where, your job isn't to, get upfield. Your job is to hold blockers up and play good team defense. And we were really, really good on defense. But, you're not as productive when you're a 3-4 defensive end as if you're a true edge guy. So, but in the drills where I was like an edge guy at Ohio State, they like really liked it. And again, they invited me to every game, got to know the staff. It was Jim Trustle's first year. They went 7-5. So saw a lot of bad football. It wasn't like it was, magical 12-0 the first
I
year. They
remember
lost
that
five
year.
games. Yeah, it was ugly. And, yeah, they lost on senior day. It was an Illinois game. Their quarterback had a DUI. I'll never forget that. And yeah, they lost to Illinois, and Illinois won the Big Ten that year, I believe. So yeah, it wasn't like Ohio. I mean, Ohio State was always Ohio State, but it wasn't like, kind of the rocket ship that it was after the '02 season.
Sure. So let's talk about what school gave you your first offer.
It was actually Bowling Green, and it was Urban. Urban was at Bowling Green, and he, it was something you never forget when you've got a guy like him. And Bowling Green was on the come up with him. He had a really good year his first year there, and really good year that next year. And he was the first guy to pull the trigger. And it's funny, something that Urban always talks about is kids always remember their first offer. So that's why some schools go real early on kids. If they're phenoms, they go in 8th grade, 9th grade. Because you always remember that, because it's like once one school offers you, then all of a sudden it kind of breaks the dam and you get
Sure.
5, 6, 7, 8. It's like once Bowling Green goes, then Miami of Ohio goes, and then Toledo goes, and all the MAC schools go, and then you start to get the low Big Ten, and then you get the mid Big Ten, and then the high Big Ten is like that's like your Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State offer. But yeah, he offered me, and I always remembered that, and it was like something that he probably didn't realize what he was doing, just because he was so aggressive, and he was just he was a breath of fresh air back in 2001 when it came to the recruiting circuit, because he didn't worry about other people's opinions, and he just offered off of what his eyes saw, and he watched me work out and offered me literally on the spot. So it was really
Did
cool
he
because like
remember when you went to work with him as a GA? We'll get into that later, but did he remember you back then?
yeah, he actually did. When I interviewed him about a year and a half ago on my podcast, he talked about seeing us in our weight room, and we had like an old closet kind of weight room, like an old typical kind of Northeast Ohio small dingy weight room, but it was really effective because we really were extremely intense, and Keith Wakefield was my head coach, and we had in-school weightlifting, which is a huge edge. And we had like a 48-minute period, and we get just an incredible workout done in about like 35 minutes. So I'm talking squatting, cleans, no rest between reps, really, really heavy weight being lifted, squatting like 585 and hang cleaning a bunch. And he saw all that, and he just couldn't believe our efficiency and how intense we were, like especially for the middle of school day, because it wasn't like it was just all the football teams, and it was one coach. It wasn't like there were 10 coaches in there. There was one coach. So he remembered that. He said it was like Rocky Four and some old school stuff. But yeah, it was cool that he remembered that. And at one of the coaching clinics at Easton, he actually was sitting with Wake eating breakfast with him, and he was talking about that, and it was pretty cool. So yeah, he remembered it just because he said he's never seen a high school team train like that before. And I remember Wake said that he said that to the team, that there was a college coach, and people didn't realize it was Urban Meyer at the time and what he would become with his success at Florida, his success at Ohio State. He was just a guy at Bowling Green. Yeah, exactly. But it was still a pretty big compliment. A guy that had been at Notre Dame and whatever. So it was pretty cool.
So let's look at your college career a little bit schedule wise, because I'm sitting there looking at an outline of your career, your resume, and your 2003, your first year, you redshirted, and the team went 11-2. Am I right on that?
Yep.
your first year playing was your worst year. That was the 8-4 season, but
Yeah.
you did have two wins, one over Michigan and one over Oklahoma State in the Alamo Bowl. That was a pretty fun game, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I will touch on the '03 team because that was a team that was preseason. If they weren't one, they were two. It was the '02 team basically coming back with basically everybody except for Mike Dawson, Donnie Nicky, and obviously Maurice Clarett had to sit out. But that team had 14 guys get drafted, so that was really talented. It was the most talented team NFL draft wise until this past year's Georgia team that they broke the record with 15 draft picks. But it's tough when you redshirt because in the old days when you redshirt it meant you couldn't play at all. Like you didn't get to play 4 games like you do now. So that's really devastating. It's not devastating if you use it the right way. Mentally, I wanted to redshirt because I knew I wasn't ready to play. Like I could have played, but I wouldn't have been effective. So it's like you kind of got to know like what your limits are. And some of those guys once they found out they weren't playing and they weren't traveling and they were kind of left in the in the dust, like it was bad for them. There were a lot of kids that didn't make it to the spring. Like they were in my freshman class. They got caught up in drugs and partying and failed drug tests and didn't go to class. And so that's something that's really, it can be treacherous if you don't know how to navigate it and if you can't keep yourself up because you do feel like a bum. Like when the team leaves and they're playing on Saturday and you're still on campus and you're eating at Mirror Lake or whatever, and they're just like, isn't the team playing today? What are you doing here? It's like, oh, I'm not on the travel squad. So
you had 15 players, guys, to sign with your class that year, correct?
yeah.
So I've got a list here. We had Dante Whitner, Lou Irizarry, Anthony Gonzalez, David Patterson, Darius Hilly, Brandon Maupin, Devin Jordan, Ira Guilford, Ashton Yabuti, Kurt Lukens, Todd Beckman, Marcel Frost, Sean Cotton, and Reggie Smith. And, the ones that made, you, Dante, Anthony Gonzalez, and Todd Beckman really made a name for yourselves. The other guys fell by the wayside in some capacity.
Ashton got drafted in the third round, I think.
Yeah,
so
sorry.
yeah, he did. No, you're good. I mean, but you're right. Like, I mean, if you look at the hit percentage, we had, Dante's a grand slam. He went 8th overall. David Patterson and I were solid guys. Todd Beckman was first team All Big Ten his junior year, so you can't really take that away from him.
No.
But yeah, there's a lot of fallen stars in that class, man. And there were some guys that were really heralded guys that people were excited about it. It just, for whatever reason, a lot of arrests, a lot of suspensions, and it sucked because, like, you come in together with this kind of idealistic thing where, oh yeah, we're going to come in together and we're going to take on the world. And, yeah, we're going to win the national title together and, whatever. And like, you kind of do that because, back in the day, I think recruiting classes were closer because you played in all-star games together. And I used to do the North-South game, which was a big all-star game. You played in the Big 33 game. So we had already played like 2 games where there were like 8, 9, 10 of us on the teams. And then we reported and, we won both, we won those games and it was exciting. But, I'm just telling you, it's weird. Once you get there, man, it's like everybody just kind of goes their own way, and there's some cases in recruiting where the classes stick together and guys become best friends. I mean, I think that's pretty common, but with my class, it was just like guys were just falling by the wayside. And it was strange because after a year, half those guys were gone after 1 year. So it really, it was kind of shocking and it was kind of sad because there were guys that, you were friends with and they just, they're not bad guys, but there's guys that made bad decisions and, the consequences, you don't get to be a part of the Ohio State football team anymore. So it sucked.
I remember there one kid, and I say this, bring this name up affectionately because Louis Irizarry is from Youngstown, and he, as you told us many times, he had all the talent in the world and a few bad decisions, and his big D1 career was taken away from him and all that stuff. I knew Lou's dad in I went to Ursuline for 1 year, and his dad and I had a class. I don't remember what class it was, but he's the nicest guy in the world. And his dad was a Golden Gloves boxer, a very, very talented boxer. And this was when the age when Ray Mancini, I don't know if you remember that name, but Ray was a year older than us. And boxing was big time, and Lou was really good. Went quite far in the Golden Gloves field. So when his son got in a fight, I go, well, if he's anything like his dad, he won that fight, and I'm sure he did. But it's these things happen. Somebody on the board made a comment. We were talking about life. It's easy to screw up. It's really easy to screw up, and as you get older, you start realizing how many pitfalls there are to life. But so let's move on. Your 2004, we talked about 8-4, 05 with the 10-2 season again with big wins over Michigan and then Notre Dame, and the Notre Dame game was the Fiesta Bowl, and I remember that when was it Pittman that had that long run towards the end that made it a 2-score game?
Yeah.
Dude, I yelled so loud at the TV, I hurt my head. I thought I was having a stroke. I was so happy because Notre Dame has a big presence in Northeast Ohio, and those people could be rather arrogant. So it was nice to see Ohio State beat them. And then 06 was the 12-1 game season with wins over Michigan and a national champion runner-up. And 07 again was 12-1 with, again, good on you, a fourth win over Michigan with a national champion runner-up. So anytime you played Michigan, you're undefeated, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean it's helpful to do that. Yeah, when we played, we were lucky enough to win 4. We were lucky we had Troy and Beanie and really good defense, and it was one of those things where you can't do it alone, obviously, but it is nice to get those wins. And honestly, as sad as it is, but like when you lose the way we had the last 2 years, it's a great reminder to not take those games for granted. Because I mean, I never took those games for granted just because I grew up in the '90s where we lost games that we never should have lost. And it's tough, man. Especially when you have to go to Ann Arbor, you just want to win. Like you don't want to. And again, I say that like obviously you want to win, but sometimes people get all bent out of shape about style points and, oh, we didn't play well, or, oh, the O-line sucked today, or, we gave up 500 yards. It's like, as long as we win, I don't care. As long as we get one more point than they do at the end of the game, I don't care if we give up 8,000 yards and we give up 100 points. As long as we have 101, I'm good. And that sounds crazy, but I just, our sometimes people that support the team, they just get so bent out of shape after wins. And I'm like, guys, like, you better enjoy these wins, because pretty much every program outside of Georgia would trade places with us right now, maybe Bama. But a lot of other teams have had ups and downs, and you just got to enjoy these good times, because sports are secular, and we've been up for a long time now. So gravity says that there's a point where we're going to come down. We've been fighting it, and thankfully, I don't think we're there yet. But I think
it's easy to take success for granted.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
So your favorite win, I know you've talked about this before, but your favorite win over Michigan was the 07 game when it was a 14-0 game or something like that. It was in the rain. You guys couldn't pass, and it was smash mouth football, correct?
Yeah, it was. It's just different when it's your last game and you don't get there's no tomorrow. Again, not to be like too dramatic, but like, when you've played them 4 times and you've won every time, and then you only got one shot left. Like, you don't want to go out with an L and then have to live with your last game being a loss to them like forever, because that sucks. I mean, you don't want to carry that for the rest of your life. Like, you lose to the team that you always win, especially like after what we went through in 06, where we get crushed by Florida, and then my friends all leave. TJ Downing and Troy Smith and Gonzo and Teddy and Pittman, they all declared or were seniors and out of eligibility. So you look around and there's a lot of guys that are young that haven't really played a lot. We had a great defense that year. We're number 1 in total defense. Offense really young, not many career starts coming back, and we had a lot of guys step up and play hard. But going up there, it's always just dangerous and scary, just because I remember the '95 game with Eddie, and we lost, and you're like, there's no way they could ever lose with Eddie George and Orlando Pace, and they lose. And I've seen really good Ohio State teams go to Ann Arbor and die, and their dreams die. And so like, you're just kind of psychotic that week, because you're really hard on everybody, because, you just know how hard it is, and you know how bad it hurts to lose to them. So you've seen people lose to them. Like, I honestly, I always say I was undefeated because in 03, I didn't travel, but in 03, when I was on the team, we lost. But, do I count it if I'm not there? Like, I don't know. I guess I could, but like, if you're not, like, I mean, I literally was so insignificant to the game that they left me in the dorm room. So it's like, like, if you're not on the field, it's like, it's like if you're on the JV basketball team, like, you don't count your varsity championship if you don't play.
Well,
So
on the '03 season when you redshirted, if they would have won, and would you got gold pants that season, or you don't?
oh yeah,
Or the guys? Okay, well
yeah,
then
yeah. They give everybody
one.
gold pants. Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I have 6 pairs because I got 2 as a coach, but it's just I don't know. Like if you're not there, like I mean, I don't know. Like I mean, I guess it counts as a loss, but if a basketball player or a hockey player don't travel with the team and they lose a game, and yeah, well, I mean, I guess you lost, but I'm not trying to like dodge it. But the one good thing about that is like, I didn't go to that game, I didn't play in that game, but I remember the feeling afterwards of the game, and like I remember how bad it was around campus. I remember how bad it was around the Woody Hayes, and it's terrible. And it's like, man, like I was just lucky that it wasn't a game I played in. It was a game where I was kind of like an ancillary piece to it. But man, I remember it was just it's devastating to the community when you lose to Michigan, especially when if we win that game, we're playing for the national championship again. So a lot of people are like, hey, repeat and everything else, and we just choked. I mean, we didn't play well. We were soft, and Michigan whooped us up there, and it sucks because when everything's in front of you and then you choke it up against Michigan, man, there's nothing worse.
So you were captain the '07 team, correct? Okay, so you finished your record at 42-8. That's a pretty good four season record, averaging 10 wins a year. You '07, you were first team All Big Ten, and you were first team All American that year as well. You ended up being a 7th round draft pick of the Bears, pick 247. But you played for the Bears. Was it 4 years you were in the league? 4 years seasons that you 3.
Oh.
So you bounced around a little bit, and no disrespect. I mean, the heck, you got called to show up, but you're the Bears, the Dolphins, the Niners, Bengals, Lions, and Broncos, and some of them two times, all that stuff, which says an awful lot for they didn't want you, but they wanted you back type of stuff. So you were just on the cusp.
Yeah, it's weird in the NFL because there's a lot of times where they kept trying to, if you're like the last offensive lineman on the group, sometimes if it's a Friday, they'll try to sneak you through waivers over the weekend if they gotta activate a guy for Sunday. Like like we had in Miami though, we had a fullback break his ankle in a Friday practice, which is generally like a walkthrough practice, and they had to sign a fullback to play Sunday, literally. And they said, look, we're gonna release you late on Friday, hope that you get through waivers on Saturday, and you'll be back on the team Monday. And I was like, okay, cool. So I was like, what does that mean? They're just like, yeah, you just can't come to the game this week, and you've already got paid for the week and you got everything. So you have the week off, you've got all your money, you're already vested for the year. And I'm like, okay, so no big deal. And I literally was talking to like Bill Parcells and Tony Soprano, God rest his soul, who passed away, and great guys. I grew up worshiping Bill Parcells. I loved Bill Parcells. So I usually got to talk to him, had breakfast with him, and he's like, you got a good future here and all this. And then, you go home the next day, you find out you're claimed by San Francisco. And it's like, the NFL it's not, I could never describe it as cruel because, you get paid too well for it to be described as cruel, but like, you have to leave like that, like in 2 hours. And I don't think there's a profession on earth other than maybe the military where all of a sudden, you just got to drop everything and leave. So, I had a dog, I had my ex-girlfriend at the time. I mean, it was, just, and I just left everything behind. Apartment I never saw again. We had our 2 cars down there. So it's crazy. And like, I just flew out. I actually flew to New Jersey because the team played the 49ers that Saturday. And this was the Giants right after they won the Super Bowl. So they had, Brandon Jacobs and Bradshaw and Eli and Plaxico and all those guys. And they beat us like 44-6 or something crazy. And so, after that game, we fly from New York to San Francisco, which is like, it's like a 7-hour flight. Get home. Next day, we have films, and I don't even know the coaches, the players. Like, I went to the team meeting on Saturday night at the hotel, and the players didn't even know who I was. They're just like, who is this random guy in our meeting? Like, we thought and again, that's the absurdity of the NFL. So then we have our films on Monday, and Mike Nolan was the coach, and he gives us this big hellfire and brimstone speech where he's like, we're going to put the pads on, we're going to tackle, it's going to be tough, a lot of blocking, tackling drills and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, great. So, my first practice is going to is gonna turn up and try to kill us, which is fine. I mean, when you lose, you got to expect that it's gonna get turned up a little bit. But I go to Chipotle and I go to like a Borders to like read some magazines to get out of my hotel room because I didn't have anything else to do other than watch the hotel TV and I just want to get some fresh air. And I get on my iPhone, which is like a brand new thing at the time, and it says head coach Mike Nolan fired by the 49ers. Assistant coach Mike Singletary promoted to head coach. And I was like, oh my God. And then I read the article and it says also fired was offensive line coach George Warhop. Because I literally talked to George Warhop, who's the O-line coach, and said, hey, can I come in and meet with you for maybe 30 minutes, 45 minutes, just go over some of the basic calls and protection stuff. I know you got a game plan, you got all kinds of stuff to do, but he didn't even know me, and I was just trying to learn some of the offense. And he's like, yeah, come in at 9:30 tomorrow, and we'll go through the play sheets, and I'll kind of get you up to speed. And I was like, great. And then he got fired, so I was down to the assistant line coach. But the NFL it's just such a funny thing, and there's a lot of guys that kind of live that life that I live, where it's like you're just like a nomad, you're a mercenary, and it's fun because you're a young kid, I didn't have any kids, so it made it a little easier to move around and live in a hotel and whatever, and you make great money, so you never complain about it, but it's not like the NFL that you dream of when you're a little kid. When you get cut, you bounce around, and the worst part is like every time I got cut, I never saw it coming. It was just something where it just happened. And I was like, what happened on a Friday? And it was like after I had like my best week of practice, I was feeling great. Team was doing good. And I got whacked because they had to sign a fullback. And I totally understood it because, they only dress 45 guys on game day. So when you're a rookie O lineman, if you're not starting or the top backup, a lot of times you're inactive or you're just standing there. So I was going to be inactive that game. And they said, well, we're going to play a fullback. So again, it was fun. And it was good while it lasted. And I have nothing but good things to say about playing in the NFL.
Cool. So to finalize your resume, my notes, your last was you were a GA, a graduate assistant, under 3 coaches, correct? Tressel, Luke, and Urban Meyer?
Yeah, it was. My life is never not interesting, I swear, because I lived through Tress getting fired, Luke got fired, and then Urban, came in, and so it was normally, if you're gonna work for 3 different coaches, you got to go to 3 different places. But I sat in the same seat and had 3 different bosses basically. So yeah, I saw a lot in coaching, a lot of good, a lot of bad, and it was something that it was fine. I liked it. I hated the lifestyle, honestly, but it was something that. Yeah, I learned a lot from.
Did you see Tressel's thing coming? Was it a surprise?
The interesting thing with Tress is that he, we knew that the Sports Illustrated thing was coming, and I had guys in the media that were texting me saying, hey, I interviewed this guy, this guy is in prison, and he ratted on Tress, and he talked to this journalist, and the things coming out today, and then there's a bunch of false alarms, and I think Lou Holtz came out and said that in 2012 Urban Meyer will be the head coach at Ohio State, and that was like completely out of the blue, and I was like, Lou Holtz, like, I mean, it was just like something that like, it'd be like if I said that Nick Saban would be the head coach at Ohio State in 2024 or something, and people would be like, that doesn't makes no sense. Then all of a sudden you kind of see the tea leaves, and then all of a sudden, that article hit on a Monday night. I think it was supposed to go live like Tuesday. Tress got whacked on Monday. Yeah, it was Monday, and because I was at a movie on that Sunday, and I was like, oh, we're off till like 4:00 on Memorial Day. Like we had like a team workout at 4:00, so the kids could stay home with their families and barbecue and whatever, and then we had like a light workout for them to come burn the hamburgers off that evening. And I remember I was watching The Hangover 2. This is like one of those things you'll never forget. And I get a text from Brewster, and he was like, why do we have a team meeting at 7 a.m. tomorrow on Memorial Day? And I was like, that ain't good. And then Greg Gillum texted me, and he said, meeting at 7 or whatever. And I called, as soon as Brewster texted me that, I called Jim Bowman, and I said, why do I have a meeting tomorrow at 7 a.m.? randomly. And he's like, he had no idea. And I was like, how do you not know? But Mike Brewster knows. And then, we go through the whole thing, and it was just so as soon as like I get that text from Brewster, I know what's going down. Like I'm not, I wasn't bored yesterday. And like, when you hear the rumblings and all the craziness, and then, all of a sudden you have just a random staff meeting, you're just like, man, this isn't good. This is not good. And, Truss was at Breckenridge, and he had to fly back in the middle of the night. They made him fly back on Sunday, and they met with him like Sunday night. And then Monday they made it official at his office. And it was just like, I was in like an alternate world, because like I saw a bunch of people I'd never seen before. There were a bunch of cops in the Woody Hayes, which I'd never, it was like, a bunch of stormtroopers, and I was like, what the, what's going on? Truss's office was shut, and it usually wasn't shut when he was here. I remember I got to the building like 4:30 in the morning because I couldn't sleep, and I worked out and I tried to get some of the anxiety and edginess off, and I kept checking out front to see if any of the media had been tipped off, and none of the media was there. It was amazing because, like, when he got whacked, it was in front of like probably 5 of his players, like Brewster, Muhort, Sabino. I remember because like the whole room was empty, and Gene came in, told us that the Truss resigned, even though he was forced out, and then we had that staff meeting. It was terrible. And then he left through the back door.
Surreal. It was a surreal. I remember waking up that Monday morning and getting the Twitter, email, something on whatever website we were paying attention to back then, and it's like, wake me up from this dream. This just doesn't seem real.
Yeah, it was weird because a lot of the players found out on SportsCenter, which that's not right. But I mean, that's just how media works. And I remember like he never pulled into his parking spot. Like I kept waiting for him to pull into the front gate, and he'd parked in the back so he could get out and not be, the media wouldn't see him. So he parked in the back, which he'd never done before. So because I kept checking that front gate to see if it opened or not, and never opened. And then I was like, oh, he's here. But he, when his door was shut and there were people going in and out of his office that I didn't know who they were, guys in suits, I knew it wasn't good. I mean, obviously, you know what's coming. And, yeah, it was crazy. So I followed him home, made sure he got home. And then it was, it was just kind of pandemonium because we had a team workout. Obviously, all the media was staking out the Woody Hayes. Terrell had his 300 ZX that was a lemon, and I told the coaches like, Terrell should probably park in the back of the building, and they're like, oh no, they're not gonna, and he pulls up in this 300 Z that was a piece of garbage. It was a lemon. It like broke, so it was like the worst car ever. But everybody got their photos of it, and they're checking license plate numbers. It was an interesting time to be on the staff at Ohio State. So I've kind of seen everything.
So you went directly and you stayed on staff and worked with Luke, and that was a tumultuous time, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, because not only do you lose Tress, who's your offensive coordinator and your leader, and he's a national champion coach and, one of the greatest coaches ever, but you also lose Terrell. So Terrell, becomes permanently ineligible, because you want to go to the supplemental draft. So, you lose the Heisman favorite at quarterback. You lose, one of the top 5 coaches in college football. And Luke, he didn't really deserve to be put in that situation. They put him in that situation because, Gene was, trying to, I guess, save face. But, Luke deserves to be able to hire his own staff. And there's a lot of those guys on that staff that weren't Luke's kind of guys. So, it was tough. I mean, we had to run with, a quarterback that wasn't really good, and then Braxton, who wasn't really ready because he was only a freshman. So, it's tough. And, and then we also had just a myriad of suspensions that would just pop up. Like Marcus Hall would get suspended for a game randomly for stuff related to off the field stuff. Like we just kept losing guys like randomly to suspensions. Like Mike Adams was out for like 5 games. DeVere was out for like 8 games, so it was Boom was out for like 5 games. So, I mean, it was like, we were down to the nitty gritty on the team, and we were young. We weren't very talented. We had like our suspended guys were good, but like we didn't have them for the first 5 games, and it really hurt us.
So then Urban shows up, and is it fair to say that was like a blowtorch to set, like a flamethrower coming through the changes that he brought in?
Yeah, and honestly, we earned it. You know, I mean, when you lose 7 games, I mean, people aren't going to keep their jobs at Ohio State, and he's got his methods. You know, and again, I love Coach Meyer. I think he's fantastic. He retained me, a handful of us, Luke, Vrabel, Stan Drayton. Then everybody else just kind of went, off in their own directions, which is kind of like one of the strange realities of coaching is when someone gets, fired and then you get retained and then there's a new coach and it's just, you see how the dynamics change. It was really weird at the Gator Bowl because, there were 3 or 4 coaches that were retained and 3 or 4 that got fired. So, some of us are going to, they're going to be going back into their old house and their old office. And then there's 4 or 5 guys that the Gator Bowl that cleaned their office out before we left and their houses are on the market and they're trying to find somewhere to coach. So it was interesting. Yeah. Urban showed up. It was just a whole different universe because it was so intense and, he's different. He's a different cat, but we needed it because we lost 7 games. I told the guys, I'm like, look, I don't care what he does to you. I don't care if he runs you to death every day because you lost 7 games last year. You have no, your Sugar Bowl victory against Arkansas doesn't exist anymore. So you have no chips that cash in and you can cry about how hard everything is and how tough everything is. And you have to come in 6 to 7 days a week, but that's just what it is now. You lose 7 games, man, you lose all sort of jurisdiction on what you can say, in terms of, oh, coach, this is how we used to do it. Because 7 losses just isn't going to cut it at Ohio State.
Would 3 losses cut it?
No. I mean, 1 loss doesn't cut it anymore because it's just like that's where the stakes are. But, like with Urban, I think that's like the hardest part about Urban is that he can't accept losing. And again, I'm not saying you should ever accept losing, but you also have to realize that it's going to happen at some point and you can't let it kill you. Even though I can always say this, it's so easy for me to say that now that I'm not a player and I'm not a coach anymore. Because when I was a player and a coach, it absolutely killed me to lose. I mean, like it kills a piece of you. So, but yeah, it was just it was funny when I saw him. He was like, we had lunch at the Woody a couple of years ago, and we were walking through the hallways, and like all the coaches are eating lunch in the dining room, and I'm like, you guys get to eat lunch and take a lunch and kind of relax. And I was like, Coach, I never got to eat lunch when I was a GA. I was eating like trail mix and stuff because we never really had a break. And again, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. And the program's in a much different spot now than it was then because, it's on rails now. Back then it was, he literally walked into the hallway and I was like, Coach, 12 was different. He's like, it was like Vietnam, wasn't it? I was like, yeah, it's a pretty good way to describe it. Like, I'm not trying to be, too whatever, but like he called it Vietnam. I was like, it's pretty wild because it was every day was some 5-alarm fire would go off and he'd go off the handle and whoop the coaching staff and whoop the players and but it kept us sharp and kept us on edge and it worked out pretty good.
So let's circle back. We went off a little trail of what I expected to discuss, but let's go back to your recruiting. Were you Bobby Buckeye? Did you always want to be an Ohio State Buckeye?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up when I was in Florida. There's the time where you like, Florida's it's weird because people like Florida State because Florida State was like they were like Georgia and what Alabama is now. Like back when I was
Miami was really big back then.
Yeah, well, Miami when I was down there in the mid '90s, they were on probation, so they weren't as good. And Butch had to come get them off the death penalty and get them. They started to rise like around 2001 ish. But Florida State in the mid '90s was just powerhouse, and they were the cool school. They were the Georgia, the Bama, the Clemson. Ohio State was so great. They had Eddie, they had Orlando Pace, a lot of big time talent. So, I was but I always loved Ohio State. I always would wear Ohio State stuff when I was in Florida, just because I was always kind of a contrarian. Everybody else was wearing Florida Gator stuff and Dolphin stuff, and I'd wear Ohio State stuff because I was from Ohio, and that's like kind of what I was raised with. I had Ohio State stuff in my room in Florida, which again, just to be different, because I was born in Ohio, and we'd go to Ohio every summer, and so I always loved Ohio State. Even down there, I was like the only kid that wore Ohio State stuff. So I wore Browns stuff. It was just it was just kind of it was different, because that was what my cousins liked, and that was what my family liked. So that's what I liked.
Sure, sure. So who from Ohio State offered you?
Stress. Yeah, it was like one of those crazy moments that I'll never forget because I was in art class. It's like the last period of the day or the last two periods of the day. My high school coach told me to come see him. He was going to talk to Tress, and basically say, "Hey, are you going to offer him or not?" So you can imagine like, and this is before cell phones. So it's not like I could text my coach and say, "Hey, any updates?" But he told me to come see him like 17th period, which is like the second to last period. You have 18 periods at Perry, and he's like, come see me then. So like, as soon as I get into that class, I tell the teacher I gotta go use the bathroom. So I grab the hall pass and jet down to the coach's locker or the coach's, office where the football locker room is. And he was walking with another college coach and I talked to him and I was like, so what'd you hear? Did you hear anything? And he's like, yeah, I talked to Chelsea. They're gonna offer you a full ride. And I was like, yeah. Again, like when you hear that, you're just like, they're gonna give me a full ride. They're gonna finally do it. And he's like, yeah. And I was like, just tell him I'm coming. Like I'm done. Because I hated recruiting. I hated the pomp. I hated talking to coaches. Not that I didn't like the coaches, but like, you just don't like to kind of slow play everybody when there's one that you really want. So like I just told him, I was like, I'm in. I'm good. I'm coming. I'm not like, and I think that they used it against me a little bit, that they knew that I really wanted to go to Ohio State because I was local and I just didn't want to go anywhere else. Like I didn't feel like going to Northwestern or Purdue or Stanford. As much as I like those schools or Vanderbilt, I really wanted
You were
to.
offered by all those schools?
Yeah. And the funny thing is, I didn't realize how good of a school Vanderbilt was back then. I didn't realize, I knew what Stanford was, obviously. I didn't realize how good of a school Northwestern was, because I never really considered them. I mean, most kids don't even know where Northwestern is. So it's like I knew it was in Chicago, and Chicago is really cold, but I had full rides to all those schools, and
I need to interject something here. Now, some of you may not know this about Kirk, but your dad passed away when you were 13 years old, correct?
yeah,
So your mom's raising two kids. You had a sister, correct?
yep,
And the cost of college was always expensive. It was always something to be concerned about. And her boys getting a full ride to some of the most prestigious schools in the country. What a relief for her. And for you too. Your life has changed because of this. When we went through the COVID slowdown, I would argue with people, but football needs to continue. They would say it's only a game. I go, no, it's not. It's a life-changing event for so many of these people that wouldn't go to college otherwise. And you're walking, talking, breathing proof of that.
well, yeah, and I think that football keeps a lot of kids in school. There's a lot of kids that like one of the things that we always joked about when we were at Perry was that we wouldn't want to miss school when it was leg day, because like we had in-school weightlifting, and it's like we had percentages. So if one week you're doing 75% of your max, the next week you do 80% of your max. So if you skip that Monday where you're squatting, you're gonna have to literally go from 70% of your max to 80%, and you're gonna get killed if you miss that workout. So like, I mean,
You had to go to class.
well, yeah, you had to go to school because you don't want to miss your workout. If that was like one of the things. Our workouts were in the middle of the day with the football coach, and it's like, you miss those workouts, man. You got to go from 70% of your squat max to 80% of your squat max. I mean, you're going to get destroyed, because it's a step. You don't want to take too big of a step up or you'll get crushed. And I always remembered, like, I never wanted to miss a workout because they were so hard, and it's like, but it was a progression. So it was hard, but like it was, if you didn't miss any of the stairs, you were in good shape. But if you missed one, oh my God, it's like this terrible, So
the byproduct is you got better grades at school because you went to class all the time because you didn't want to miss a workout.
Yeah, and that's why, like, people. I think every kid should have to have in-school fitness, in-school weightlifting. I think it's just one of those things where it teaches kids how to be healthy, work out, because they cut basically every physical activity from every school. You're not allowed to have gym anymore and that kind of stuff. But like the weightlifting stuff that we did was unbelievable, and it really I mean, again, we never wanted to miss, like, on the football team. Like, I know us, the guys that were serious on the team that were good players, like, we didn't want to miss a workout because it was just like, it was so hard to make it up once you didn't get it in, and you just felt that guilt when we all had like little groups of three that the coach would assign us in. And, it's like, if you don't have your spotters, then all of a sudden it's harder for the other guys. And, you don't want anyone to suffer because you couldn't go to school that day. So it was kind of a weird thing that people don't really think about. But yeah, like football and lifting, it really helps attendance. Like if you're passionate about it.
Well, so that brings up an interesting question. When it was very rare for somebody to leave high school early and show up right around now at college. So you showed up June. Is that when you would show up?
No, we showed up in August because they didn't have that rule changed in '05 where kids could graduate and come for summer classes. So they could be a part of summer conditioning. That was a huge change because before, like with my class and that '04 class, they showed up on, like, you either graduated in winter quarter, spring quarter, or you came August 5th. And most kids came August 5th because the early the early graduation thing wasn't anywhere near as easy as it is now because there weren't online classes like there are now. So you can't double up your English credit like most schools have to get you out of school early. Because now, like when kids plan it, they can take classes over the summer and they can make it pretty easy to graduate early because you just take summer school online and then you double up your English and then
Wasn't
you
Maurice Claret one of the first guys to show up early?
yeah, I mean that was super progressive. I mean, there were like two guys, him and Michael Roberts, who was a kid from Canada. They both graduated early in that OTU team, and in '03, Dante Whitner and Ashton Yabodi graduated early. But most of us didn't even have the option to do it. So
Yeah.
there were guys like I didn't want to do it because I knew that I knew I was gonna redshirt. So like I was like I don't want to go early and have to do another year of winter conditioning. That sucks. Like there's nothing worse than if you graduate early and you're not good enough to play and you redshirt because then it's like you're there for like 6 years. It feels like you have to do an extra thing to get winter conditioning. So, but yeah, like it was really progressive. Now it's something where kids can plan it and they can get it done quick, and it's just so much easier to do now than it used to be.
So you signed your letter of intent in February. That was still the signing day back then, and then you're theirs. They own you. What do you got to do before you show up in August? Workout,
Well, that's
right?
that's the interesting thing is that, they send you a workout plan. It's just like a placard, like a little fold out thing, and it's this is what you do week 1. This is your bench press. It's what you'd expect: bench press, incline dumbbells. This is your chest day. This is your leg day. Squats. Cleans, whatever. This is your auxiliary day where you do your arms, that kind of thing. And I literally just I did the workouts. I did the running. I ran really hard. I don't want to say I doubled up the running, but I really pushed the pace of the times that they suggested just because I wanted to make sure I was in great shape, and it worked out great. It was really fantastic that we did that. Because again, like not everybody did it, and like I was stunned how many guys like didn't do the workouts, but I was like, are you guys crazy? Because like we're coming. You got to remember, you're a freshman and you're showing up to the team that just beat the Miami Hurricanes. So, and those guys are all back. So it's like Will Smith and Krenzel. And so the last thing I want to do is be the guy that like, who's this turd who didn't even work out and wasn't even in shape, because it's just, you don't know. It's tough.
So what you just said brings up two things. One, that first day, did you have a conditioning program, a conditioning test or something like that? That first day of fall camp?
Yeah, we did. It was 20 half gassers, and half the guys failed it. Half the freshmen did. Like I killed it because I was an O lineman, but I was also light, so it was like 280. So I crushed it. But I also was in really good shape, so it was just a breeze for me to do it. But I had no idea it was coming. And 20 half gas is a lot of running. It's a gasser is the width of the field down and back. You got to make it if you're a big guy in 20 seconds. If you're a linebacker, tight end, 18 seconds. And if you're a little guy like a receiver or quarterback or a DB, you got to make it 16 seconds. You get a 30-second rest between each sprint. So that rest goes really fast. So, you're exhausted.
So you show up in August and you're going against guys who just won the national championship. How big of a step up? How big were your eyes? And who was the first guy you went against in practice?
I went against Mike D'Andrea in the first contact drill we did, and I actually pancaked him, which surprised me because Mike D'Andrea was a 5-star, unbelievable. He was like supposed to be the next Andy Katzenmoyer. So like when I drew him, I was like kind of nervous because like I read all of his press clippings just like everybody else did, and the next Katzenmoyer, he looked the part. He was a monster, and I got under him and pancaked him, and it was incredible because my offensive line coach was like, that was a hell of a block. And I didn't know I had it in me, but I did. And it was something special. So
So who was your offensive line coach back then?
Jim Bowman, he was there the whole
Yeah.
time that Truss was there. So yeah, there's a little bit less turnover on the staff back then.
Well, was Canaster? He was gone after.
Yeah, he was gone
Well,
after the first year. He was gone.
okay. Yeah, he's a Youngstown guy. I get to.
Hmm.
I met him 3-4 times. Met him through a mutual friend, and when he was first there. Neat guy. Neat
Yeah,
guy.
absolutely.
So, who else did you go against that freshman year? I think you buddies with Will Smith.
Yeah, Will Smith was the guy I went against every day. He was unbelievable, really talented. A guy that we lost too soon, sadly, but just a great player, great person. Miss him to death. His kid's there now, which is awesome. But it was sad when Will got killed. But yeah, he was my favorite player because he taught me so much, and he went against me every day, and really taught me how to play tackle. So it was he was just a great leader, a great captain, All-American, first round pick, and what a great mentor he was to me.
So that brings up a question that uh, when you're going against the guy on the other side of your offense, their defense, do you guys compare notes? Do they help you out and you help them out to make you better and them better, or is it just you got to figure it out on your own type of thing?
You try to help each other out. This is part of being a good teammate, especially as on Saturdays you're all on the same team, so you want everyone to be at their best on Saturdays. So Will used to help me with all kinds of things: stance, tells, pass sets, hand fighting. Will was great about that stuff. He loved helping me out. Shane Olivier helped me a ton. Nick Mangold, Stepanovich, those guys all helped me a lot when I was young. And so, it can come from any of those guys, but when you go against good D linemen and they help you out a little bit, it's always nice because they see your potential and your talent, and it's cool to watch them cultivate it.
And they know you're serious about it versus dorking it around.
That's the biggest thing is, man, if they know you're serious about it, it's a whole different ball of wax. Because some people think it's a game, but it really ain't a game. You got to be serious about what you do, and I was serious as a heart attack, and it paid off. There's a lot of guys that they don't like when you go hard, they don't like when you do extra, but it all pays off in the end. So
You made a comment before we were comparing notes about this discussion, all that stuff, and when guys get recruited, they think it's a culmination, it's a coronation versus
yeah.
it's just the beginning and all that stuff. You want to share your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's just hard because like a lot of guys, they get to college and they think that they've kind of arrived, and it's really like you're starting from square one, because you have to reprove yourself. There's a lot of people that come in with different notions of what they think they deserve, or what they've earned, or where their starting position is on the track. But everybody starts from the starting line, so all of a sudden you're rolling, and there's a lot of guys that get passed quick because they think that they should be up ahead of where other guys were. So it's always interesting, and that's why I always tell people I'm not excited about kids that commit until they prove they can play college football, because there's a lot of kids that they get here and they can't handle the atmosphere, they can't handle the pressure, they can't handle mentally it's too hard for them. So there's a lot of different things now that these kids are attracted to, and it's really, really tough. We're getting close to an hour, so I want to wrap this. Any final thought, David? Because we could go on. We could do this again tomorrow, honestly, if you want. If you got a bunch more to go.
I'm busy tomorrow night, but yeah, I would like to expand on this because
Yeah,
every time you give me an answer, I think of something else that I want to expand on this. It's fascinating, and
yeah,
there's not a lot of surprises, but it's neat to have certain things confirmed, and just that back and forth between offense and defense is something that makes sense. You're both on the same team, but you're also competing. You don't want to, you got to look good too, type of stuff. So
yeah, absolutely.
it's cool. So
Well,
go ahead.
No, I say we appreciate you guys. Appreciate you, Ron, Sue, Paul, Frank, all you guys that are on here watching. A ton of people on here watching. Any final thoughts, David? We wrap this thing up.
Kirk, again, what I said at the beginning, guys like you, I admire. That sounds a little corny and all that stuff, but you did stuff that I wish I could have done. I didn't have the discipline and the maturity when I was 17 years old to get where you got. And, even if I did, I probably was maybe a good D2, maybe one AA player, and that's about it. So, for you guys to be able to make it at such a high level, I'm envious. I think it's really cool. And you being able to share your thoughts and your experiences it's what brings me to Buckeye Scoop. You're the real deal. And, like I say, you guys always just discount it and say, no, I was born with good DNA, and that's true. But you had to work your ass off, and kudos to you for doing it.
I appreciate you, brother. Well, yeah, we'll do this again, maybe Thursday. I mean, I really enjoyed this. This was a blast. So I'm going to wrap this thing up. Appreciate you. That was David Pinterick. He is the best outstanding contributor on Buckeye Scoop. Really, really successful race car driver. If you guys are interested, check out his race cars on YouTube. I mean, he rides these Trans Ams that are unbelievable supercars. Incredible guy. He asked to do the interview, or he asked to interview me. He thought it'd be really fun to do. He's a Scoop member, a Scoop family, awesome guy. If you guys enjoyed this, BuckeyeScoop.com is where we are at. I'm going to head to the boards now. If you enjoyed this content, please leave us a like and subscribe. As always, we appreciate you guys. Thank you so much, Buckeye Nation. And thank you, Scoop family. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Thank all you guys for tuning in, and go Bucks.